Michael Harrison had become a legend without meaning to. At 39, he was the face behind one of the most influential tech companies in America. His name appeared on magazine covers, at innovation conferences, on lists of young billionaires. Everyone wanted a piece of his time, his attention, or his signature, but nobody really knew the man behind the suit. He lived in a glass penthouse in Manhattan's Tribeca, surrounded by minimalist art, invisible security systems, and a privileged view of New York City's ordered chaos. He had a driver, a private chef, an assistant who never spoke to him without scheduling first, and a permanent silence that filled the space when the door closed at night. That Monday morning began like all the others. Meetings, charts projected on giant screens, million-dollar decisions made in seconds. Michael, dressed in an impeccable grey suit and dark blue tie, maintained his neutral expression, while his team talked about international expansion and new investment rounds. But something wasn't right. A cold sweat ran down his back. The voices in the room began to fade, as if coming from a distant tunnel. He tried to stay upright, but his vision blurred, and in an instant, in front of 12 petrified executives, Michael Harrison collapsed onto the conference table. Hours later, he woke up in a white room. Soft light, the smell of disinfectant. A doctor with a serene face and firm voice explained the unthinkable. Advanced stage pancreatic cancer. Inoperable. Untreatable. Only weeks remained. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison, it's only a matter of time." Michael didn't respond. He just nodded, his eyes fixed on a water stain on the ceiling. He didn't feel fear or rage or sadness. He felt empty, as if he'd already been dead before knowing it. That night he returned to his penthouse. He turned on a lamp, poured a drink he didn't drink, and sat in front of the window. He observed the city lights, so vibrant, so indifferent to his tragedy. No one would cry over his death. No one would notice his absence. He was a lonely man who built an empire but never a life. He made a decision. The next day he disappeared from himself. He shaved his head in front of the mirror, let his beard grow. Dressed in old jeans, a second-hand jacket and worn sneakers. Got rid of his phone, his cards, his expensive watch. Stuffed cash in a backpack and left without direction. He left instructions with his assistant to take indefinite vacation. No one should look for him. No one should know. That's how he began walking the city streets like a ghost with a fake name. Days passed. Michael wandered through neighborhoods he'd never set foot in. He ate at diners, slept in cheap hostels, observed people as if seeing them for the first time. Everything seemed more real, more human, more painful too. And then came that Thursday. It was raining like it only rains in November, with fury. Michael was running between puddles looking for shelter when he saw it, a small diner with a red awning and windows fogged by steam. He entered, shaking water from his hair, and sat at a table by the window. The place was simple, but warm. It smelled of coffee, freshly baked bread, chicken soup. The radio played softly with an old jazz tune, and then he saw her. Emma. Dark hair tied hastily, blue apron, and eyes that looked at no one. She walked between tables with a tray in hand, wiping plates, collecting glasses. But what caught Michael's attention wasn't her understated beauty or her thin figure. It was the broken shine in her eyes. She was crying, silently, professionally, like someone who'd already gotten used to pain. Michael said nothing, just watched her in silence. When she approached his table, he noticed the slight tremor in her hands. "What can I get you, sir?" "Whatever you recommend." She looked up, surprised by the kind tone amidst so many hurried customers. "Today's special is beef stew and rice. Comes with iced tea." "Perfect." Emma nodded and left. Michael stared at the table, but he didn't see the silverware or the plastic tablecloth. He saw her face. That face that hid so much more than it showed. He came back the next day and the next, always at the same time, always alone. Emma at first seemed uncomfortable with his presence, but little by little she began to smile at him, even if barely with her lips. Michael didn't ask much, it wasn't necessary. The silence between them said more than any words. One Tuesday afternoon, while the rain pounded the windows insistently, Emma stumbled with a tray. Michael immediately got up to help her. When their hands touched for an instant, Something changed in both their gazes. It wasn't love at first sight, it was recognition, as if finally someone saw them as they were. That night, Michael walked in the rain without an umbrella, with a smile he didn't remember feeling in years. He didn't know how much time he had left, but for the first time, he had a reason to keep waking up the next day. Michael became part of the diner's furniture without meaning to. Every afternoon, he occupied the same table by the window, ordered the daily special, left a good tip, and maintained a brief conversation with Emma. Always brief, always with the same measured kindness, as if afraid of scaring her if he crossed an invisible line. What began as curiosity transformed into routine, then into necessity. From his corner, he observed everything: the place's dynamics, the tired looks of the cooks, the rush of the diners, the noise of plates and glasses. But above all, he observed Emma, her way of walking, of furrowing her brow when something went wrong, of offering a smile that seemed more an obligation than a genuine gesture. Emma had scars, not on her skin, but on her soul. And Michael, who was learning to see beyond appearances, noticed everything. The manager of the place, a man with a bulging belly and authoritative voice named Frank, treated the employees with contempt. He yelled in public, demanded without thanking, docked tips on a whim. Michael saw it, saw how Emma lowered her head every time he approached, how she pressed her lips when he called her useless or stupid. And he also saw the rude customers who took advantage of her silence. A couple who demanded she smile as if she were their servant. A man who tried to touch her hand under the pretense of leaving a tip. Every time that happened, Michael contained the impulse to intervene. It wasn't his role, not yet. One afternoon, while Emma was serving him coffee, something different happened. "Do you always come alone?" she asked, without looking him in the eyes. Michael looked up, surprised. Until then, she had never asked a personal question. "Recently, yes," he responded. "And you? Do you always smile even when you feel like crying?" Emma froze. The silence lasted barely a few seconds, but it was profound. Then she sketched a sad smile. "You don't always get the luxury of crying." Michael said nothing, just nodded. That night he didn't sleep well. His mind kept returning to that phrase. The following week, during a longer conversation while the diner emptied, Emma let out the unthinkable, as if she couldn't hold it in anymore. "My dad has cancer," she said, wiping a table without looking at him directly. "Kidney cancer. We don't have money to operate on him." Michael looked at her in silence. He felt a blow to his chest. The coincidence seemed like destiny's cruel joke. "What about public services?" he asked, feigning ignorance. "We've been on the waiting list for months, but he's getting worse, and I can't stop working. We don't have anyone else." Michael stayed still, processing. He knew what he had to do, but he also knew he couldn't do it directly. If she discovered who he really was, all the trust that had begun to build would crumble. That night, in his hostel with damp walls, Michael made 2 discreet calls. One to an old friend who still ran a network of private hospitals, another to a trusted lawyer who owed him a favor. He gave clear instructions: absolute anonymity. That Mr. Martinez's treatment be covered by a charitable foundation. That everything be done without Emma being able to trace the origin. A few days later, Emma entered the diner with bright eyes and a different glow on her face. "Someone," she told Michael without thinking, "someone paid for my dad's operation. I don't know how, I don't know who." Michael feigned surprise. He tilted his head, as if not fully understanding. "And you believe in miracles?" Emma smiled. For the first time, she truly smiled. "I want to believe." Michael lowered his gaze, hiding his own emotions. He felt his body reminding him every day of the time he had left. Dizziness, abdominal pain, deep fatigue. But every time he saw Emma, that weight lightened. Meanwhile, the diner's manager began to notice Michael's constant presence. He looked at him with suspicion, asked Emma if that guy bothered her. He even tried to approach Michael to ask veiled questions. "What do you do? Why do you come every day?" Michael responded with a calm smile. "I come to eat. Isn't that what you do here?" Frank huffed, frustrated, but he couldn't do more. Emma, although cautious at first, began to open up slowly. She told Michael about her childhood, about how she'd cared for her father since her mother abandoned them, about her dream of studying graphic design, cut short by the need to work since she was 17. Michael listened attentively, as if each word were a treasure. One night the sky lit up with lightning. Rain pounded the diner's red awning furiously. They had already closed. Only the two of them remained, because Michael had offered to wait for her until she finished her shift. Outside, thunder seemed like the roars of an angry god. Emma, soaked to her ankles from going out to buy napkins, returned shivering with cold. Michael offered her a cup of hot coffee he'd prepared with the cook's permission. They sat facing each other, at a table in the back, with the sound of the storm as background music. "You know what I wanted to do as a kid?" she asked, looking at her cup. "Design book covers. I love stories, but life... Well, you see?" Michael observed her. He wanted to tell her so many things, that his life had also been derailed, that success hadn't saved him from anything, that he was afraid of dying alone. But he only said, "You still have time." Emma looked at him with a mixture of sadness and hope. "And you? What did you do with your life?" Michael thought for a second, then smiled. "I tried to build something, but I think I forgot to live while I was doing it." She didn't respond. They just stayed there, sharing the silence. The connection was increasingly deep, more honest, but Michael knew the clock was running against him. Each day was a gift, and one more brick in the wall he'd have to tear down sooner or later. Emma's father began to improve unexpectedly. Within weeks, tests showed the treatment was working. The tumor had reduced in size. The constant pain that forced him to stay in bed began to disappear. He was eating again, talking, even laughing a little. Emma accompanied him to each appointment with a lump in her throat that slowly dissolved with each piece of good news. "There must be a mistake," she told the doctor on one occasion. "Was it really this treatment that saved him?" "It wasn't a mistake, miss," the doctor responded with a smile. "Your father got lucky, very lucky." Emma wanted to believe it was a miracle, but something didn't add up. The foundation that had paid for the treatment had no website. Nobody knew of other beneficiaries. Everything was too perfect and too quiet. Michael, for his part, weakened more each day. He no longer walked with the same agility. He took small breaks when no one was watching. Sometimes, upon waking in his hostel room, he'd stare at the ceiling for long minutes, trying to convince himself to get up. The pain intensified. The painkillers no longer had the same effect. But still, every afternoon, he went to the diner. He needed to see her. Emma had become his last refuge. The only person who treated him as human, not as CEO, philanthropist, or public figure. But that same connection was starting to hurt. He was lying to her. Each day that passed in silence, Michael felt he was betraying her trust. Until he couldn't anymore. It was a mild night. The sky was clear for the first time in weeks. Emma and Michael left the diner after closing and walked through the cobblestone streets of Lower Manhattan. There was a rare calm in the city, as if everything was suspended. "I want to tell you something," Michael said suddenly, his voice low. Emma looked at him. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were heavy. "What's wrong?" Michael took a deep breath. The air hurt in his lungs. "My name isn't David. That name I told you is fake." Emma stopped. She frowned, not understanding. "So, who are you?" "My real name is Michael Harrison. I am the founder of a tech company, a very big one. You've probably heard of it." Emma took a step back, confused. "Michael Harrison, the one from the magazines, that Michael?" He nodded. "Yes, that one, but that doesn't matter anymore." "Why did you lie to me?" she asked, her voice rising a little. "What was the point of all this?" Michael lowered his gaze. "I'm dying, Emma. I have cancer. I don't have much time. I wanted to spend my last days as an ordinary man, without suits, without meetings, without masks." The silence became heavy. Emma tried to process everything at once. The lie, the confession, the illness. "And you too," she whispered. "Did you pay for my dad's treatment?" Michael looked into her eyes. "Yes." She looked away with contained rage. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to think I did it so you'd owe me something. I just wanted to help you. No strings attached. And I wanted to get to know you without you knowing who I was." Emma crossed her arms. She was trembling. With rage, confusion, sadness. "I don't know if you're really sick or if you just like playing with people." Michael took a step toward her, his face tired and sincere. "I'm not playing, Emma. I have weeks left, maybe days. I wanted to spend that time with someone who didn't see me as a walking wallet, and you made me feel human again." She didn't respond. She turned around and walked back to the diner alone. Michael stood there, stopped in the middle of the empty street, his soul in pieces. The following days were silent. Michael didn't go to the diner. Emma hoped not to see him. But every afternoon, she looked at the table by the window, with a hole in her chest she couldn't ignore. Until one afternoon, chaos erupted. Manager Frank was screaming like crazy in the middle of the dining room. A new employee had made a mistake, and he was insulting him in front of everyone. Emma intervened, fed up. "Enough, Frank, you have no right to treat us like this." The man looked at her with contempt. "And who are you to tell me what to do? You're just a waitress who cries in silence." At that moment, the diner door opened. Michael, dressed in a suit for the first time since he disappeared, thin, pale, but with the same quiet authority as always. "You're fired," he told Frank, without raising his voice. The manager let out a mocking laugh. "And who do you think you are to—" "I'm the new owner of this place." The laughter cut off abruptly. Everyone in the diner froze. Michael handed signed documents to the administrator and signaled Emma to accompany him to the kitchen. "I bought it," he told her. "No one's going to mistreat you here anymore." Emma didn't know whether to scream, hug him, or run away. Tears streamed down without permission. She sat down, took a breath, and looked at him with a mixture of anger and tenderness. "You're an idiot," Michael smiled. "Yes, but one with good intentions." She slowly approached and touched his hand. "I don't know if I can completely forgive you, but I also don't want you to disappear." Michael squeezed her hand gently. "I don't plan to, at least not by my own will." That day, Emma became the temporary manager of the diner. Michael wanted everything to be in order before leaving. He taught her how to review accounts, how to treat staff fairly, how to negotiate with suppliers, not for control, but because he trusted her. The relationship between them was no longer that of two strangers, not even that of a benefactor and a grateful woman. It was something more complex, more real. She cared for him without making it obvious. He looked at her as if each moment by her side were a gift. They shared silences, coffees, glances, and although neither said it, both knew that bond was now unbreakable. Emma no longer saw Michael as the mysterious millionaire, nor as the sick man. She saw him as someone who had come into her life to transform it, as someone who, without meaning to, had taught her that kindness still existed, even in its most imperfect forms. Michael no longer had the strength to hide it. Each step cost him. Mornings were slower, evenings briefer, but something inside him stayed firm. It wasn't hope. It was peace. He had found closure, a reason, a person. Emma accompanied him every day, not as a nurse nor as an employee, but as someone who understood the value of being present. She made him ginger tea, covered him with soft blankets on cold afternoons, helped him walk when his legs trembled. But above all, she talked to him. She told him about her childhood, about the books she wanted to read, about the colors she'd use if she ever painted her own house. Michael listened as if those words were an elixir that lengthened time. "Do you regret anything?" she asked him one night, while the city murmured through the window. Michael took time to respond. "I regret not having lived sooner, having confused success with loneliness." Emma took his hand. "But you lived, even if it was late." Michael smiled, a weak smile, but genuine. Days later, he signed his will. He was meticulous. He left Emma $5 million, not as payment nor as reward, but as gratitude for having seen him not as a sick businessman, but as a man who still had something to offer. But that wasn't all. He founded an organization, Second Chance, he called it. Its purpose, to help people with terminal illnesses without resources, provide them treatments, emotional support, dignity. Because if someone had given him a second chance to live with meaning, he wanted to give it to others. Emma was present when the notary sealed the documents. Her eyes were full of tears, but she didn't cry. Michael asked her not to. "Don't cry when I'm gone, better continue what we started." And she promised to do it. The morning Michael passed was silent. There were no alarms, no machines, just the sound of his breathing becoming lighter and lighter. Emma held his hand until the end. She whispered in his ear that he wasn't alone, that he had left a mark, that even if the world didn't know it, he had saved lives. And then he was gone, with a peaceful expression, like someone saying goodbye knowing everything is in its place. The funeral was small, only the people who really mattered. Emma spoke in front of the casket with a firm voice. She didn't talk about the successful businessman, nor the millionaire. She spoke of the man who bought coffee and bread one rainy day, and who saw in her what no one else had wanted to see. Afterward, life went on, but not the same. Emma returned to the diner. She transformed it. They painted the walls in bright colors, changed the menu, implemented fair shifts, decent wages, and a suggestion box where every voice counted. The place stopped being a pass-through spot and became a refuge, a second chance for everyone who worked there. With the money Michael left her, she paid for university and finished her graphic design degree. But she didn't distance herself from the diner, nor from the foundation. She became the visible head of Second Chance, traveling across the country, speaking in hospitals, organizing events, and above all, listening to stories. Stories like hers. In each person she helped, she saw a fragment of what Michael had taught her, that it's not about how much time you have, but how you use it. That true legacy isn't measured in bank accounts, but in lives touched. And every time someone asked her how it all began, she smiled. "A man sat down one day at a table in the rain," she'd say, "and he decided to live, even if only for a short time, for real.